Hi everyone, welcome back to This Case Takes Place. For today's episode, we're going to be looking into a case which occurred in my hometown of York. It's the case of Claudia Lawrence.
This case is pretty unique because when I was looking into it, including you, everyone's really secretive about this. It's like, I don't know if this is the cult of Claudia Lawrence or what, but I've never come across a case where no one wants to talk about it. It was like if you've seen the Charles Walton case we did a couple of weeks back.
We were talking on the phone about it and I was walking through York and I said her name and I looked around like, oh my god, I hope...
I'll tell you in person. I can't talk here. And I'm like, what?
I was like, I hope no one heard me say her name because it feels weird saying it in York.
So weird.
I don't know why, but there's a weird thing about that case for some reason. It's because there's so many strange theories about what happened to her, and no one knows.
But that happens with all cases. It's curious as to what's unique about Claudia that everyone from York is like, shh. It's like,
don't say anything.
It's odd.
It is very strange. So this case takes place on the 18th of March 2009 in Heworth, York. Claudia was described as a glamorous 35-year-old woman who worked as a chef at the University of York. She was a petite 5'6" vegetarian who maintained her slim figure and was described by those who knew her as a beautiful woman. According to colleagues, Claudia was quiet and perhaps even introverted. One co-worker described her simply as, "Claudia is a quiet girl who wouldn't say boo to a goose." Interestingly, Claudia wasn't active on social media at the time and she didn't even own a computer, rare for someone of her age in 2009. Instead, she was a prolific texter, sending and receiving hundreds of messages a day. Friends and acquaintances often described Claudia as someone who compartmentalized her life. She kept different friend groups separate so that few people, if anyone, knew her full story. Claudia had just recently moved to the Heworth neighbourhood in late 2007. Heworth is on the edge of York and is often described as a friendly, lively suburb with a high student population, which gives it a transient, ever-changing feel. A few doors down from Claudia's new home was the Lime student accommodation, which saw a constant turnover of people. It wasn't the sort of place where you necessarily knew your neighbours too well. When she moved to Heworth, she developed a close-knit social circle around her new local pub, the Nag's Head. The pub was just 4 doors down from her house on Heworth Road in York, known locally as an old man's pub. It wasn't a pub that was trendy, it's quite a... You go in there, and if people don't recognise you, they're going to give you a little look.
Wait, did you say you've been there?
Josh has been there.
Yeah,
I've been, I think, years ago.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's not really. It's only really known because of this case.
Right.
It's not somewhere you'd go, really,
right.
Unless you're local. But for Claudia, this pub was a familiar, close-knit and easygoing place to socialise and drink. It was there where she met Susie and Jen. The trio quickly became close friends and would often spend 4 or 5 nights a week drinking at the Nag's Head, buying rounds with her close friends. By all outward appearances, Claudia had built a routine, a relatively quiet life. She had a stable job, a regular pub, and a close circle of loyal friends. But the Nag's Head wasn't just a pub. It had a reputation for rumours of drug dealing, lock-ins, and after-hour parties. Some of Claudia's romantic encounters reportedly began here. Although the Nag's Head had been a source of joy for Claudia, it was about to become a focal point for something much darker.
On the Wednesday, on the 18th of March 2009, the day proceeded normally, with Claudia working as a chef at York University that morning, and then she returned home mid-afternoon. She was last spotted in person by a local childminder at around 2:50 p.m. The childminder didn't notice anything amiss. In fact, she described Claudia as, quote-unquote, she was happy-go-lucky, as she always is. The two had a brief chat and then Claudia continued on to stroll away from her house. Claudia appears to have been heading towards the local shops to run some errands. Roughly 15 minutes later, at around 3:05 p.m, a private security camera subtly placed in a window across the street captured Claudia returning to her home. Although the police have never made this camera footage public, the police confirms that the footage shows her entering her home. Claudia's day appears to have continued to progress normally from there, with Claudia's last confirmed contact being a series of texts and phone calls that night, including a phone call to her parents at roughly 8:23 p.m. All seemed normal as of that last phone call, and then we have radio silence. The first sign something was wrong came the next evening when Claudia failed to show up for a prearranged meeting with her close friend Susie at the Nag's Head pub 4 doors down. Susie texted her, quote-unquote, "Oh, thanks for standing me up!" exclamation point. Claudia didn't respond, but Susie wasn't alarmed. Claudia sometimes fell asleep after early shifts. Her silence wasn't out of character. Her other close friend Jen, who worked behind the bar that night, later said she only started to worry around 10 p.m. that night. They talked about how odd it was, but neither of them went on to check on Claudia. And this is despite the fact that Jen's route home actually passed directly by Claudia's house, just 4 doors down. Claudia's texting had ceased for nearly 24 hours by then, and yet no one seemed to have checked on her, which is especially strange considering Claudia was known to be a serial texter. Anyone who knew Claudia knew she was glued to her phone. Texting was second nature to her. It wasn't until the following day, Friday, March 20th, that Susie took action. She called Claudia's father, Peter Lawrence, and then alarm bells finally rang. Claudia's dad immediately phoned Claudia's workplace. A colleague expressed her concern and had told Claudia's dad, quote unquote, "I'm terribly worried. Claudia hasn't shown up and she hasn't said anything. It's most unlike her." That's when the shock landed. His daughter had now missed 2 consecutive shifts without notice, and her employer hadn't notified her emergency contacts. For 40 hours, it seems, Claudia simply vanished, and no one really noticed until it was too late. Claudia's father, Peter, and her friend Susie went into her home on Friday to perform a welfare check, but they discovered no one was there. The house was strangely tidy, with Claudia's handbag on the bed, slippers neatly tucked away, and her bed made, cushions plumped. Her phone charger plugged in. No sign of a struggle, but Peter knew something was off. At 2 p.m. that Friday, Peter contacted the police to officially report that Claudia was missing.
The following day, on the 21st of March, which was the Saturday, police immediately launched Operation Cabin. Over 30 officers were deployed within a day, which is rather rare for a case like this and is typically reserved for cases with a known threat or imminent danger. When investigators first searched Claudia's home, one detail immediately stood out. Her handbag and passport were still there. Now, this isn't typical. In fact, one of the first things police check when someone goes missing is whether they had access to money or a means to travel. In Claudia's case, both appeared to be untouched. Her passport being inside her handbag was especially strange. Not many people carry around their passport for day-to-day activities unless they have a specific reason. It's not standard, and it raised several possibilities. Could Claudia have been preparing to leave the country? So while some people suspected that she might have tried to leave the country, some other people suggested something far more sinister, that the passport being left behind was intentional, part of staging a scene to make it appear like Claudia had simply walked out of her life to start a new life. What was missing, however, were items that she'd typically take to work with her. These included her hair straighteners, chef hat, and backpack. The missing hair straightener suggests to some that Claudia likely had plans after work, as she would have brought it with her to freshen up after a hot and humid shift as a chef. However, the problem with this theory is that Claudia had already made plans to meet her friend Susie that very same evening at the Nag's Head pub. The purpose of the meeting was to plan a trip to Greece. She had more than enough time to go home after her shift and get ready, as the pub, of course, was just a few doors down. So, why were the hair straighteners missing? There were whispers that Claudia had spent the night of Tuesday the 17th, the day before her disappearance, with a new boyfriend. If true, maybe she packed her straighteners in her work bag, anticipating staying over at his house. Perhaps she went to work the Wednesday morning, the morning of her disappearance, straight from her new boyfriend's house, and didn't have time to unpack her straighteners and left with it still being in her bag. There was also some more speculation, though, that maybe Claudia had used the hair straighteners on someone who might be responsible for her disappearance, and that they were taken away by a perpetrator to eliminate evidence. And there was even a more chilling theory discussed online, that the cord of the hair straighteners was used to strangle and kill her. But the unusual details only started to pile up. There was another oddity. Investigators discovered hair dye boxes in her bathroom, some on the shelf and some were discarded in the bin, suggesting that this was very recent use. But here's the thing, Claudia had just recently had her hair professionally styled and coloured to brown with highlights. Changing her hair colour so soon would be described by those who knew her as uncharacteristic and also impractical. Who would get their hair done professionally and then box dye at home so soon after? This begs the question, was someone trying to imply that Claudia had planned to disappear, perhaps even change her appearance, yet her passport and bank statements remained in her bag? So,
When we were discussing this, you were like, oh no, it makes perfect sense. She's probably just, decided she didn't like the hair color and she wanted to just fix it at home.
That's what I'd think.
Yeah.
If you have your hair coloured brown and you want to turn it back to blonde, I wouldn't spend the money again. I'd just do it at home. But you said that's a silly thing.
No, that's such a man thing. You just spent all this money to get it professionally done. You're not going to just get a shonky hair dye and do it at home, especially blonde, which is harder to do.
That's what I'd do.
Yeah,
I'd do
so
that.
that was our disagreement. What do you guys think?
You said you thought that was suspicious.
Yeah.
Like it seemed like it was staged.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, if you just had your hair done, it's like nice. She's known to have brown and highlights. That's her look. You're not going to all of a sudden change it to blonde. I mean, at least that's my brain, my working theory.
There'll probably be a man and woman split here.
Yeah, and she's a woman. So I feel like I have intel. She wouldn't do that.
But there was also another odd detail. On her bathroom scales at home, there were some shoe prints. Now, Claudia was very weight conscious, and she would never have weighed herself in shoes, let alone shoes that were so big that would make her weight appear to be bigger. So, this begs the question, whose shoe prints were these on the bathroom scales?
I was saying it could have been her recent boyfriend or anyone who has stayed over at house. That could be completely unrelated.
Well, she had a new boyfriend.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Now, addition to the large footprints, another detail pointed out by family members include a pair of slippers found by the front door. They were described as old-fashioned and uncharacteristic of Claudia's style. They didn't seem like something she would wear. Could her actual slippers have been taken with her, perhaps because she was abducted while still wearing them? Or did someone in a hurry to stage the scene unknowingly place the wrong pair in plain view? If that's the case, it could indicate that the person responsible didn't know Claudia very well. A close friend would have likely known which items belonged to her, or maybe this was just a rushed cover-up, an attempt to leave things looking normal without thinking through the specific details. Ultimately, the investigators believed she likely left for work as she normally would early the next morning. Now, the investigators based this evidence on a few breakfast dishes that were left in the sink, but Claudia was also known to stay out late. They could have been from the night before. Investigators much later on into the investigation admitted that they believed that someone had been in the house and possibly staged the scene.
It makes me think about the dad. So Peter Lawrence went in there with the friend Susie, and he's like, everything looked like perfect technically. There was no sign of a struggle, but he just got the sense of something being off. And I think that's something that happens when you know someone deeply, their characteristics, the way they do things, like the slippers. As being like, to someone listening to this might think that's a really random, like that could be anything. But if you know someone and they're just like, you could just get this sense of like, something's not right here. Though she wouldn't wear those slippers. And the little details probably just pile up in your subconscious to give you this eerie feeling. And as I said, the investigators later on believed that it might have been staged.
Yeah, and you might not be able to put it into words, but you get a feeling, you know, this is like almost too perfect for what she'd do.
Exactly.
She might just throw slippers there rather than place them neatly.
Exactly.
Do you know what I mean? Those kind of things.
100%. Also, quickly, the passport. So in terms of, I agree that I think the scene was generally staged, but the theory that her passport and her bank cards were still left in her bag and it was sort of staged to suggest the idea that she had fled the country. Leaving the passport there directly contradicts that idea because you need the passport to leave the country.
And money.
Yeah. So I think they staged the scene, but the passport and the bank cards don't match the theory that they staged the idea that she just ran away because she would need that to run away.
She would need that, definitely.
So there is a bit of an inconsistency there. I haven't really quite figured out what that means. Mm-hmm. And it's also weird. Who carries their passports in their bag unless they're going somewhere?
No, you never do it. It's too much for inconvenience to replace if you lose it. Yeah.
So that doesn't add up.
Choose your license over that. Yeah.
So then why would a perpetrator intentionally put the passport in her bag if you abducted her that night and stage the scene? Yeah. That's one thing that doesn't quite add up.
So it seems staged in some ways, but not in others.
Yeah. It seems like stage everything except for that. Unless the perpetrator's an idiot. Which is possible.
Yeah.
And was like, yeah, let's make it look like she ran away. Let's pretend like she dyed her hair blonde and she did this and she did that. Everything's kind of set in a certain way. And then, let's pretend that like she ran away to go to Greece or something and then just like slip the passport in like an idiot. I didn't think it through.
Yeah, it's possible.
Yeah.
It's possible.
That's my running theory then. So early on, the police faced criticism for issuing a description of Claudia that many close to her said was inaccurate. So the public appeal described her as blonde. But according to her friends and family, her hair was brown with highlights at the time, despite the boxes of dye. So maybe they saw the boxes of dye and assumed, okay, maybe she actually dyed her hair blonde, and they put that image out to the public that we're dealing with a blonde woman. Additionally, police used a decades-old picture of her when she was just 26 years old. Interestingly, her father, Peter Lawrence, appeared to stand by its accuracy in his own appeals. Regardless, the result was a public image that may have not reflected who Claudia really was in those crucial final days, and that, in a case full of ambiguity, might have mattered more than anyone realized. So the police are putting out an image of a blonde woman. Maybe she wasn't actually blonde, and that kind of stuffed up in terms of people may have come across her but weren't really looking out for a blonde.
Well, it would, right? Yeah, because if you're looking out for a blonde woman, if you've seen that, okay, I'll keep my eyes peeled for a blonde woman, and you see someone who's got brown hair, you go, can't be her.
Exactly.
You'll just probably brush it off. Even if it is her, you'll just think.
Yeah. So the police faced some criticism about that. They were like, there's an inconsistency here. They're also using a picture of her 10 years younger. Yeah. Maybe it just confused the public at a time that was so critical. So by Monday, 30th of March, Claudia's case featured on Crime Watch. The public appeal generated new leads, but also added confusion. It was at this point that investigators began to closely examine Claudia's movements days before her disappearance. So let's begin with 10 days before Claudia disappeared. So 2 men were reportedly seen at her front door. One was older and wore a sandy-colored Mac, which is sort of like a long trench coat. That's English for like a long trench coat, a sandy-colored Mac. The other was described as a younger Asian man or possibly someone with a darker complexion. So the Sandy Mac person is a recurring individual in this case. So that begs the question, who were these men? Were they friends or just delivery people or possibly something else? We then go forward, March 16th. So between 2:30 and 3 p.m., which is on the Monday, a man was seen walking along Heworth Road, which is where her house was, reportedly on the phone wearing a tan hip-length jacket with a hood, carrying a nearly empty backpack. He matched this following description: white male, early 30s, 5'9" to 5'10", stylishly cut dark brown hair with a fringe, smart casual appearance, dark jeans or chinos, and dark shoes. Claudia was spotted at the door also on her phone, so possibly talking to this guy. She, however, appeared surprised to see the man, but let him in. Before doing so, however, she glanced up and down the street as if checking who might be watching. Why would she do that? Was this someone who she's meant to be seen with? Or could this be the new boyfriend? And she doesn't want people to know that she has a new boyfriend. It's important to note that the 16th is also significant because in the week commencing this day onwards, Monday, Claudia stopped attending the Nag's Head, which is very noticeable. So this wasn't normal. Claudia was a regular, and this sudden change in routine was noted by investigators. As we mentioned before, she usually hangs out with her 2 best friends 4, 5, 6 days a week drinking with her mates. But as of Monday, she just stopped going. And this coincided with this man. So did this visitor possibly have something to do with the fact that her routine suddenly changes? So then we jump forward again, March 17th, which is the Tuesday, so that's the night before she disappeared. A colleague of hers named Oxa claimed Claudia told him she had stayed out all Monday night with a new boyfriend and returned home at 5 a.m. that day on a Tuesday. Oxa said she had been drinking out until 4 a.m. But Oxa didn't report this to police until a full year after her disappearance, which begs the question, why did he delay in telling investigators this important bit of information? Furthermore, was the man we just talked about, as mentioned before, was that the boyfriend that Oxa was referring to, or was that a completely different man? Oxa had reportedly given Claudia occasional lifts to work, but was vague in his timeline, and police have interviewed him more than once. Possible suspect. A little bit suspicious there. And then that leads us to the day of her disappearance, the Wednesday. Although we know she attended her shift that morning as per normal, we have no security footage of Claudia leaving or walking to work that morning. The Melrose Gate post office's camera never caught her, which is part of her normal and most direct route to work. So that begs the question, was she on a different side of the road, or was she picked up by someone on the way that morning, or was she not at home that night or dropped off from a different location? So did she spend that night at her boyfriend's house and then got dropped off at work? It's unclear. Which also, could that be the same reason why there's no security footage of her Wednesday morning going to work? Was she also at her boyfriend's house Tuesday night after she got off the phone with her parents? Because both the day before she disappeared and the day she disappeared, she wasn't seen going to work. Mm-hmm. Interesting. Regardless of how she got to work, we know that she attended her shift as per normal. Once Claudia leaves work is where things get curious. Roughly 17 minutes after leaving work at 2:47 p.m., security footage captures Claudia walking through a university car park on her way home. In the footage, we see a red van parked up as she passes by. Once she gets closer to home, Claudia is captured on surveillance footage again right by the postbox. She appears to be posting a letter or package, and police have never revealed what she posted or where it was going. What she posted remains a mystery to this day. Interestingly, in the background of the footage, a red van with ladders on the roof passes by. Is it the same red van from the university car park I just mentioned? That van has since been observed near a business in Moulton, as well as on Heworth Place, which is the street directly behind Heworth Road, where Claudia's house was. So, was this red van following Claudia? Was she offered a lift by this red van? Some believe it belongs to a person of interest who has since been arrested and released, but this has not been confirmed. What we do know, soon after posting the letter, Claudia is spotted by colleague Joe. She gives Claudia a lift to the remaining 0.9 miles home. Joe drops her off outside of her house at 2:50, and shortly after is when Claudia is seen by the childminder. She heads towards the shops, as mentioned. She runs some errands, and then she gets home at 3:05, goes through the door. That's where we left off last. So then we get to that evening. Claudia was last sent at least 3 texts to her ex-barman Steve between 6:08 and 6:42. So she's sending texts to her friend Steve. Each text was casual about holiday plans. Steve was at Cyprus during this time, so he's not under investigation. He's not a suspect. He was in a completely different country. At 7:12, Steve texts again, but Claudia doesn't reply. At around the same time, one of Claudia's closest friends, Liz, was also texting Claudia. And quote unquote, this is what Liz said. She texted me the night she went missing. We sent 3 or 4 messages. The last one came at around 7 p.m. It was just general chit-chat. Claudia said she was getting up early to walk to work. I told her she shouldn't walk at that hour, but she said she wasn't worried. It was good exercise. Quote unquote. Liz later admitted, quote, now I feel terrible. I wish I'd rung her and persuaded her to get a taxi, unquote. Shortly after, at 8:10 p.m., Claudia then spoke to her father. They had made plans to meet at the Nag's Head that Friday. At 8:23 p.m., she then spoke to her mother. Both women were watching the same program, Location, a shared favorite. Claudia's mum believes that she was preparing for bed during the call. By all accounts, it was a perfectly normal conversation. Claudia was cheerful and there was nothing in her voice to suggest worry or fear. But here's where it gets interesting. Shortly after, Claudia sent a text to her friend Jen. She says, quote unquote, bloody hell, I was going to do that in an accent. I won't. I'm terrible with English accents, let alone York accent.
Bloody hell.
Bloody hell.
I've got 12 days on the trot.
Literally, I would have done that. Can you do it? Because you've got the York accent. Can you just say that one line for me? Yes, do it. Go on.
If I was going to say it, I'd say bloody hell. I wouldn't say the hell. I wouldn't say bloody hell. Bloody hell. I've got
That's
12
what
days.
She texted. Go.
I've got 12 days on the trot. Early mornings too. No fun for me.
Perfect. Thank you. So this text lacked Claudia's traditional trademark X, something she almost always included. Also, the message itself may have been false. Susie later stated Claudia had planned to take Friday off. And may have been simply overlooked, or could it have been that those texts weren't from Claudia? So she stops texting normally, and then that one text is a bit uncharacteristic. Maybe it was a staged text. We're unsure.
Was it confirmed that she had 12 days on the trot all early mornings? That seems like
a cover up a little bit.
Well, I'd be interested to know if that's even true, because I think that kind of violates UK law for working.
Susie said that wasn't true.
Yeah. So okay. Yeah. Right. So that's not true.
So Susie said that she had planned to take Friday off. So
right.
The question is, was this just like she just was being dramatic and overlooked the fact that actually I'm not working Friday, or did someone at that point go into her house, take over? She's like, abducted or whatnot, and then someone grabs her phone and texts her friend to make it look like at this point.
Well, it would if she was busy.
Yeah.
That would make it look like she's preoccupied. So don't expect any texts.
Yeah.
Don't expect me to see in the Nag's Head.
True.
I'm going to be because apparently she would always sleep when she did early shifts. She would always nap.
Yeah.
So that would mean that she would be preoccupied with work now. So
That's
the 12
true.
days, you're probably not going to see or hear from me too much.
That's true.
Which would make a planned disappearance now
Yeah.
seem...
100%.
Yeah.
Because her friends the next night weren't even concerned when she didn't rock up because they're like, oh, she probably slept in because we know
doing
that
early
she's
shifts.
working because she's got an early shift. You're right. I didn't think of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So investigators next began looking at the surveillance footage around her house the night she disappeared. And what they found was disturbing. At least 4, possibly 5 people were seen behaving suspiciously in the hour that the police believe she could have been abducted. For example, there were people loitering around, looking at her building, or accessing the alleyway that her backyard had access to. This all happens at roughly 8:45 p.m. to 9:15 p.m, just after Claudia's last confirmed communications via text message. Was this group watching her house? Were they conducting a drop? Or were they surveilling the area for something else? One car nearby had its hazard lights flashing, visible in the window reflection from the security camera. Yet, the police later claimed it was a street lamp malfunction, but this claim doesn't match the footage. The police notably only appealed for 2 of these individuals. Why were the others omitted? Were they identified and quietly dismissed? We're not sure. This has never been confirmed. Now, this wasn't the only footage that was captured. At 9 p.m, a Ford Ranger SUV was spotted parked one door down from Claudia's house at 58 Heworth Road. The vehicle remained there for at least 36 minutes, longer than any takeaway order might justify. So why was this truck here? Inside the truck, there was a man with short grey hair, a front passenger who was female, and in the rear seat there was another woman, and the police believe there also could have been another man in the rear seat as well. By 9:37 p.m, the truck pulled away. Its registration would have been captured by security. The police claim to have interviewed the driver, but the public has not been told what the explanation was, and this has only raised further questions. By the next morning, surveillance continued to record unsettling footage outside Claudia's home. Some of it was similar to what had been recorded the previous evening. So these men loitering around the house, in her back alleyway, looking at her house, just acting suspiciously, to the point that this Heworth as well isn't the kind of area, is it, Josh, that people are going to be around at that time? It's not the kind of place.
Is it? But there's got like Lime Street accommodation. Isn't it a bunch of youth? Like, wouldn't it mean that people are generally out and about?
Yeah, but not at that time.
Maybe not.
York dies. York is
Really?
dead by like 2 p.m. for the most part. A weekend maybe if
Yeah.
nightclubs go till 4, but for the most part in Heworth,
Yeah.
you're not going to see
It's
that
a
many people
suburb,
around.
so,
Yeah,
like,
you're not
yeah.
going to see people around really.
And it's all a bit convenient. If her text she speaks to her mum at 8:30, 8:23.
Yeah.
She stops talking to her, and then a mysterious kind of a bit suspicious possible text right at the time that all these people are captured kind of loitering about.
Yeah, it's weird.
It's odd.
At around 5:07 a.m. that night, 4 individuals also appear to be acting suspiciously, and it's unclear if all of them are the people seen the previous night.
I should mention, though, there is one person consistently, both the night before and the morning after, that appears to be the same person. So online, people refer to this person as the quote-unquote light person, but it's only because what they're wearing is light. So if you're watching, there's like these images that we can pop up. But yeah, if you're just an audio listener, it's called the light person because they're just wearing lighter clothes. So it's assumed or believed that this is probably the same person. The night
They stand
before.
out a bit.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so for audio listeners, there's someone wearing light-coloured clothing, and the morning of her disappearance, they appear to walk past Claudia's home wearing oversized clothing, concealing what appears to be a backpack. Adding to the intrigue, this person later walks along Heworth Road, glancing upward, possibly at Claudia's home. What's strange is that the footage cuts twice for a total of 31 seconds. The police later claim that this was due to poor camera quality, but the lighting and flow of the footage before seems consistent until those missing moments. So the footage that's missing, they're claiming that this was just a glitch in the camera, and they've cut it out. However, for the rest of it, it's totally fine.
Yeah.
And also, there's no need to cut that out.
Yeah.
Just show it. Just show it glitching. There's no need to cut that bit out.
So does that mean the police is hiding something? What do you think that could mean?
Well, I mean, it's not possibly.
Yeah.
But also at the same time, they could have just removed some footage because it was bad. But then again, there's no need to. There's no need. Just show the bad footage.
Yes.
Then everything's less suspicious. Because when you start deleting things, then people, even if people are wrong in assuming their assumptions are wrong, it's still suspicious. So just leave it in. But,
and there's a pattern of the police doing this where there are certain angles, and it could all be completely reasonable. Like one of the ones saying, when Claudia walks back home from doing her errands the day before on the Wednesday, we don't have access to that footage. But the police are like, we can see her going into her house. So why not release that to the public? It seems very particular about what they release and what they don't. It just adds to this criticism of the police. But it could be, unfounded. But
what we can get into soon as well, which we will do, is that some police officers knew Claudia.
Yes, that's true. Okay, I like it. Yes,
the reason why this footage could have been deleted is maybe a police officer who knew Claudia, who's working on this case, might have just gone, we don't need that bit, do we?
That's true.
So we'll get to that bit soon, but keep that in your mind, guys, because she did know some police officers. Mm-hmm. Now, not only this, there's also other security footage that wasn't released, other angles from fixed cameras nearby. It begs the question, why wasn't this footage released to the public? If someone's gone missing, you want to release as much information as possible because any small clue could and usually can lead to something being solved or piecing together a puzzle. If you're leaving out footage, that's, in my opinion, suspicious, but what do I know? Just after 5:08 a.m, a car swerves towards the middle of the road, seemingly to avoid a vehicle parked near Claudia's home with its hazard lights flashing. Who was in the car, where did it go, and who was it avoiding? We're still not sure. Okay, just to summarise, just to make things really simple, all contact with Claudia ceases after 8:30 p.m. Her usual bedtime messages have now stopped. She was due to walk to work Thursday morning, but she never arrived. A vehicle is parked suspiciously outside, and people are seen loitering near her home. The evening and morning footage appear to show the same individuals. The police have only appealed for 2 of the 5 people who were observed near her house. The cameras that could have shown vital perspectives were either not working or were not shown. So the police continued to question anyone who could have seen Claudia nearby, and what they found was a cyclist reported seeing Claudia at 5:35 a.m. near Melrose Bridge, which is on the way to Claudia's work, and that was the route she would actually take. It was said the man she was seen with had been smoking a cigarette in his left hand. Remember this detail for later on, as it is quite relevant. Now, later on, at 6:10 a.m. on the 19th of March, a motorist reported seeing a man and a woman arguing outside the University of York campus. Claudia's shift was supposed to start at 6 a.m. The witness told the police that the couple had been arguing next to a parked car which had the passenger side door open. This mysterious man was described as being 5'6" tall, wearing combat trousers and a dark hooded top which covered his face. The woman, who could have been Claudia, was described as being shorter with dark blonde hair, wearing a white t-shirt, overcoat, jeans and white trainers. Now, the police are unsure if this was one suspect or 2 separate men that Claudia, or potentially Claudia, was seen with. Despite several high-profile appeals by the police, no man or men have ever been traced. By 6 a.m, Claudia had not arrived for her shift that morning. Despite this, her employer didn't reach out to her emergency contacts to flag the absence and to perform a welfare check. At 12:10 p.m, her phone was turned off. Investigators were able to confirm that it wasn't smashed, lost, or left idle. Someone had deliberately powered it down. Now, one of the criticisms that was seen early on in the investigation was the fact that the alleyway that Claudia's house is connected to was never searched. The alleyway connected Claudia's house to the street to the rear of the property called Heworth Place. This alley connected to the properties from the house numbers 44 to 52, and even linked to a nearby car park shared by the Nag's Head pub and a local motor garage. When a new team re-examined the case years later, they did search this alleyway, and some arrests were made. So this begs the question again, had the police just overlooked key evidence, and was it discounted too quickly? As we mentioned before, Claudia would frequent the Nag's Head pub. During the investigation, the Nag's Head became a focal point in the days following Claudia's disappearance. a few things happened that raised some serious questions. The Nag's Head was also a bed and breakfast, and there were whispers of a mattress and bedsheet being removed and a sudden refurbishment of one of the rooms just after Claudia disappeared, and this happened before the police could search the premises. The landlord at the time was a man named Simon George Foreman, and he would eventually leave the pub in 2011. Some say his focus was more on damage control than ever helping the investigators with the case. Now, in addition to the sudden or convenient refurbishment of one of his rooms, is the problematic nature of its car park. As mentioned, the pub's rear car park backed onto an alleyway that connected both Claudia's home and the street called Heworth Place. It's been said that guests staying in the B&B sometimes accessed their rooms via a rear metal fire escape, which could be convenient for some. There were security cameras covering the rear car park, but it was all turned off. At the time of Claudia's disappearance, it was allegedly disabled, and regulars knew of this. Why disabled security in the area where after-hour drinking and possible drug activity were known? A live system might have been bad for business, but it could also have helped capture something crucial that night.
So now we get to the point of Claudia's social life. Now, initially, when I'd come across this, I was thinking, I wouldn't even bother talking about that because a woman's, sexual preferences and history, what does that have to do with the case? But it is so relevant to this case. That's why I just wanted to say it doesn't, go women, whatever they want to do is great. But
it's important in this case for a few different reasons.
Exactly. So we're going to go through her social life and whether or not, who were her sexual partners and whatnot. But I did want to preface that. Obviously, we're not taking a dig at her, but it is important to look through. So during the early investigation, Claudia's case was featured on Crime Watch, where Detective Superintendent had made comments that Claudia was involved in relationships of quote-unquote complexity and mystery. When trying to investigate Claudia's final movements, as well as possible suspects, investigators stumbled across a challenge. Claudia had multiple facets of her life, something that both friends and investigators would come to realize. So Claudia alternated between girls' night in York with Susie and boys' night out, keeping her friends separate. Additionally, Claudia would keep her personal relationships private and seem to compartmentalize her social life, making it difficult for officers to determine potential suspects. So, as we were mentioning, it's normal for us, I kind of do that. I have certain friends that I stick to, and sometimes I get a bit of anxiety if if I ever have a party, I don't want all my friend groups mixing kind of a thing. But Claudia had this to an extreme, to the point where no one almost kind of knew who she was. It's a very, very extreme. So this privacy would also serve to fuel the media speculation about Claudia's romantic life. So when this case went out, it was a media frenzy about her sexual life. You can imagine a young, beautiful woman. Everyone wanted to find out. I guess it was just a bit salacious. But the fact that her personal life was so private made that fueled that even more. So even more curiously, Claudia's work colleague Oxa waited nearly a year to tell people about Claudia's new boyfriend. So if true, Claudia had a boyfriend at the time of her disappearance whose identity still remains a mystery to this day. One lingering rumor was that Claudia had a relationship with a police officer. They allegedly met at the Carlton Tavern next to the ACOM. Oh, I remember I said that wrong. How do you guys pronounce it? ACOM.
ACOM.
I think Acon. No. Okay, ACOM police station. So her mobile had pinged in ACOM frequently in the weeks leading up to her disappearance, adding weight to suspicions. If the officer was senior, it could explain the rapid escalation of police action when Claudia was reported missing. Although her parents initially strongly denied it, Claudia's romantic life included a series of known and suspected partners, some named publicly, others discovered through digital records. Remember that. So police believe she may have had up to 40 relationships, half of which were with men who were married or in committed partnerships. Her mother, Joan, when she had reacted very strongly to these claims initially, stating, quote unquote, "They seem to think because she was beautiful, she had affairs. They could not accept that she could have just had friends. She had too much self-respect to go with men she knew were married," quote unquote. Even her friend Jenny said, quote, "Claudia and I would go into town every couple of weeks and have a few drinks, but that was all. She's not promiscuous. She'd be too ashamed. She's just not like that. She's quite old-fashioned in a way," unquote. However, Facts began to emerge that Claudia had at times dated married men. Even her father acknowledged, quote, "As her dad, I don't expect to know everything," unquote.
So this is quite a crazy part, because that just shows how compartmentalized her life was. Because I think to have that level of secrecy with close friends, where they don't even know what you're getting up to, that's quite rare. I don't know.
Especially as a girl, you're like, oh, I just went on a date with this guy,
Yeah,
and there's
right.
like the breakdown of like what he was wearing, what you were wearing, and like women are like so like meticulous
right.
like that. But like her best friends, you know, Jen and Susie, they were like,
Didn't have a
nah, she
clue.
wouldn't, she didn't sleep around, she didn't do X, Y, Z. Where even her parents were like, absolutely not. But as things start to unravel, it was extensive. The amount of partners she had.
According to, well, there's rumours in York, quite a few rumours have circulated, so nothing that's official, but you hear, when you're from the place, you start to hear stories. There was apparently a lot of police officers who she was sleeping with.
Yeah.
PCSOs, police officers, and it was, according to what people in York say, she would actively seek out married men.
Yes. I'm about to get, we'll get to that.
It was something that comes up all
Yeah.
If you talk about Claudia Lawrence with someone in York, those are the things that will come up pretty quickly.
And as I've mentioned, so there was definitely at least one police officer that was probably reasonably high up, which makes sense. Yeah.
There was
more than
100%
one.
more.
Yeah. Well, that
definitely.
explains why it progressed so quickly. Like usually a missing persons case, they assume, maybe she just had a fight and like things are a bit slow. But this was like the next day on the Saturday.
30
Operation.
Operation.
Yeah, or cabin. I think
Operation
it was,
Cabin, 30 officers.
Yeah.
Which, like they said, that's a very rare thing to do.
Yes. So that kind of adds weight to that. So one of Claudia's confirmed exes was a man named Paddy McGinty. Paddy owned a building company in Moulton, and despite being in a long-term relationship with another woman, even raising a child with this woman, so he was in a committed relationship raising kids, he had continued a 10-year affair with Claudia. One of Claudia's future boyfriends said, quote, "She loved Paddy to bits, but she told me she wasted nearly a decade of her life waiting for him to leave his partner. It had a lasting effect on her. It made her vulnerable," unquote. But Paddy was the first of many men in long-term relationships or marriages that would succumb to Claudia's charms. The Daily Mail had featured a story of a short 2-month affair that Claudia had had with a man named Lee, who was married to Elizabeth, known as Beth. So Lee and Beth were childhood sweethearts, but are now living apart in York after Lee confessed to the affair with Claudia. What's most relevant to the case, however, is the next shocking claim. On Reddit, one person alleging to be friends with Beth and Lee's daughter stated the following. Quote, "I have no idea why I forgot to mention this initially, but the divorce I mentioned hinged on the mother, Beth, of my friend finding a DVD in her husband, Lee's, car. What was on the DVD? Claudia Lawrence having sex with around 10 different men. Police are aware of it and have a copy, so presumably have traced or trace all those men. That may well be a motive for people keeping silent. If they were officially linked to the case, it would become known, that they were in a sex tape. Again, I wish I could provide something more solid, but it was my friend's mum, and for what it's worth, I thoroughly believe my friend," unquote. The ex-wife Beth, referred to in that alleged story, said to the press, "There are lots of rumors about married men. I've no idea whether those rumors are true, but without being cruel, I don't think she was stinting with her favors. And as far as the rumors go, there were married men in that pub who she courted." I love that. She wasn't stinting with her favors. Isn't that an old-fashioned way?
Never even heard that.
Yeah.
I've never heard that phrase before.
She wasn't stinting with her favors. So when Claudia's disappeared, Beth said that, quote, "The police came to see me about 3 or 4 weeks afterwards. I don't for a minute think Lee had anything to do with it, but I wasn't surprised when they came around. I was half expecting it. I told them everything I knew. I've got nothing to hide," unquote. A close friend of Beth told the Daily Mail that, quote, "You speak to anyone in York, Claudia goes for married men. And they aren't young men. They're all in their 40s or 50s, and they aren't exactly hard up. None of the wives like her," unquote. A man who knew Claudia for many years said, quote, "She deliberately targets married men and then dumps them. The kind of guys she goes for are builder types with their own businesses. I know of at least half a dozen men she has done it to. It's caused all sorts of trouble since she went missing. The police have been turning up at men's houses and the wives have been finding out there and then," unquote.
Could you imagine?
Oh my God, so bad.
That must be such an awkward conversation to have.
Horrific. Yeah.
Yeah.
So extensive were her relationships that one man from the Nag's Head pub who was questioned by police said, Quote, I know 3 people who had affairs with her. 1 told me himself, and 2 I was told about. They are all married. All the men drink at the Nag's Head. One of the men's wives didn't even know. When Claudia went missing and the police got involved, they were trying to keep it from her. I don't know if they managed to, unquote. So, begs the question, could Claudia's disappearance have something to do with the fact that she targeted older married men? Could it have been a jealous wife? Or could it have been the cheating husband who didn't want their wives to find out and then chose to abduct and kill her? Online, one York local posted, quote, I'm from York and I've lived here all my life. Claudia was also involved with men from a certain community, a community you wouldn't want to mess with. So again, my theory is that's exactly what's happened. A married man didn't want his partner to find out and abducted and killed her.
That's what you hear a lot in York.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, the community she's referring to are travellers.
Yeah.
So apparently she had a few boyfriends who were of the traveller community, so that's gypsies. Mm-hmm. So there's quite a large population of travelling people in York. Quite a few. I think we've got 2 campsites where they all live, and apparently she was involved with a few of those.
Yeah, right.
Well, we'll get to it later on, but I used to work with a woman who got told by someone who knows someone who was the one who did it, apparently.
Yeah, right.
But it's always these little silly stories that you hear around York, and you can't take it too seriously in York as well, because I think sometimes people say it for shock value as well.
Yeah.
I think in this case it might have been a bit of shock value, but my boss told me about something that happened with some travellers.
And for Aussies, I didn't know anything about really gypsies too much until I travelled Europe, but they're mainly from Eastern Europe, right, originally, that have now lived here for generations, but they have a very
Irish
specific...
as well.
Oh, right,
There's Irish and Roma.
Yeah, so they apparently have a very specific culture, but they kind of have a bad reputation. Some of it's considered a stereotype.
They've got
like
a very bad reputation,
Yeah. So that might be the community she's referring to, because it's relevant later on.
Mm-hmm. So at this point in the case, the police pretty much have their work out for them. We have women and men now who have a motive to kill her. So you have the jealous wives, and you have the men who don't want this information coming out.
Yeah, to their wives.
Their wives.
The third person is, Claudia also involved with men from a certain community, like a rough community. We don't know what community that is, but option number 3, it was just a dodgy dude.
There's just so many possible leads to go down.
Yeah.
And this was only made trickier as the efforts were complicated by a controversial figure, Rodney Ballard. So Rodney was a retired man suffering with liver cancer, and he made some rather strange predictions. He claimed he received psychic visions and messages coming from Claudia, and he would post cryptic social media posts. These included revelations about a bed being moved at the Nag's Head, secrets involving Claudia's childhood, and warnings about people observing her movements. Among his more specific allegations was Claudia set off fireworks in school, and this was actually a fact, she did, but this was something that only her family knew. A bed was also removed from an upper room at the Nag's Head on the morning of her disappearance, and this turned out to be true too, so 2 things right. In one chilling post on social media, he uploaded a cruel pencil drawing showing a man in his 50s strangling a woman in the passenger seat of a car. He wrote, "Here we see the man who seems to be around 50. He has grey hair, number 2 cut. He was tanned in appearance, perhaps due to frequent vacations in the sun or regular outdoor work." These posts were controversial enough that the police did actually caution him, as it was upsetting Claudia's family. Rodney also questioned why certain security footage was never released, including the full views of Limes Court. He was eventually sectioned under the Mental Health Act, and I'm not too sure what happened to him there, so I'm guessing he was put in an institution for a while.
Well, he's received treatment under the Act, yeah.
So, but just before doing so, before he was, put away for a while, he wrote this on his social media. "I've been working on the mystery of the disappearance of Claudia Lawrence of York for over 4 years now. From remote viewings and other paranormal modalities, I have discovered things and gone to York and found them. I have also encroached upon the friends and family of Claudia. In doing so, I have discovered things that are completely opposite to what the press have reported. I have come to realise that all of those so-called friends did in fact know who murdered Claudia in a locked car just across from the road of her home at 0525 in the morning of Thursday on the 19th of March 2009. For too long, the police did manage to find a few suspects to investigate. 3 weeks after her disappearance, a neighbour named Blake had his home searched. Police were interested because he reportedly owned a backpack similar to Claudia's, but Blake stated, "I haven't really known her on a friend-to-friend basis. I've just known her as a neighbour, and I'm being treated like the one who's done it." End quote. When the search occurred, it turned out that the similar backpack in fact belonged to a housemate. Despite this, the search was intense, and the neighbour claimed officers wrecked his house, even breaking down the door. There was hairs found in the garden, which initially raised some suspicion, but this was explained by his father, who said that he had cut his son's hair there. A strange thing to do in March, though not impossible. So right away, the police are getting pretty intense.
Yeah.
Weirdly, breaking down doors seems like a...
Yeah.
I mean, it could be a murder investigation for all the know. It's a disappearance, but I guess they're probably treating it like a murder because she's vanished. But it seems a bit...
Yeah. She was definitely with the police officers. That's why. They just went from 0 to 100.
0 to 100, right?
Yeah.
Like 30 officers straight away, them knocking down doors.
Yeah, for sure.
Police seem like they've got some... I don't know, but yeah.
Super intense.
It's very intense. Now, the investigation went on for years from this point, but sadly, it remained virtually dormant, with no new leads or developments for some time. That was until Wednesday, the 19th of March 2014, when the police announced that they had received new forensic analysis of Claudia's home, and that they had uncovered fingerprints belonging to individuals who had never come forward. Now, initially, this seemed suspicious, right?
Yeah, but it could have just been the married men.
Married men aren't going to come forward.
Yeah, no.
If they've managed to get away with sleeping with her and the police haven't come to their house yet...
Yeah, they don't want to bring it up and jeopardize their own relationship. So this looks suspicious, but that's why her social life complicates this so much, because there's so many people involved who aren't saying anything because they don't want to be found out.
Because they could be innocent.
Yeah.
But it just makes the investigation that much harder.
100%.
But then, on the 17th of April, investigators appealed for taxi drivers to come forward, suggesting they might hold key information. The police then released security footage of what they thought could be a highly significant detail in the case. It showed a vehicle near Claudia's house on the morning of the 19th of March, the day she disappeared. The video revealed an old-style silver Ford Focus driving along Heworth Road at around 5:42 a.m. It was seen braking as it approached Claudia's house. Now, the police also attempted to trace the owner of a white Vauxhall Astra car, which was caught on security footage on the evening of March 18th, the day she vanished. The car was parked opposite the road from Claudia's house by a cost-cutter shop and a local chippy at 9 p.m, and it remained there for at least 30 minutes. Then, on the 13th of May, a man named Michael Snelling, who was otherwise known as Geordie Mick, was arrested. Mick was a former university worker, and he was a local at the Nag's Head pub. He was known to give Claudia occasional lifts. His home on Burnholm Grove, York, was searched, as well as his elderly mother's home in North Shields. The police never confirmed if he was the one driving the car seen on the CCTV. He was released on bail and then cleared without charge on the 17th of November. In July of 2014, the landlord of the Acomb pub, Paul Harris, was arrested on suspicion of perverting the course of justice. He was arrested for having an inconsistent statement, which instantly aroused suspicion. We're not sure what he said, however, it's reported that his wife came forward to the police later on and made some clarifying statements. The landlord stated to journalists, "They have searched my wife's car and found a bracelet in the car," and they asked if his wife wore it. She said no, but my girls wear bracelets.
So basically, we don't know exactly what he said. He said something stuffed up in some way. The wife's come in. I think it has to do with the bracelets. I think the police have discovered bracelets in his car and asked, did you ever have Claudia in the car or something? And he said no. And they thought, you know what? We've got a female bracelet in this car, arrested him or something. And then the wife's coming and be like, no, guys, everyone chill out. Those are my girls' bracelet, my daughters. Now, either she's covering for her husband and he was having an affair, or that checked out that it was actually her daughter. That's my guess. We don't know exactly what, statements he made that initially, aroused the suspicion that he was perverting the court of justice. But that's my theory.
Okay. Well, he also said, "They didn't question me at all about Claudia's disappearance, but when I was questioned on Wednesday, the police made it clear that all they were questioning me about was a contradiction in one of my statements to another statement I made." So I guess, that could be something to do with it.
Something like that.
Police then said, though, that he had provided information that progressed the investigation forward and that he was no longer a person of interest. However, at this time, the police had begun excavations at his pub after image sensing equipment detected reasonable reasons to dig. The outcome of these excavations has not been made known to the public.
I assume nothing came of it, otherwise he would have been
He
actually
would have been,
arrested.
yeah, I think he was totally innocent, and
Yeah.
there was just probably some loose ends that needed clearing up, and everything was cleared up, and it's totally.
I mean, he
fine.
was age 46. Maybe she was having an affair, but if so, that's like a private matter.
As far
it
as it
doesn't
goes,
seem
nothing to do with the criminal investigation.
Yeah. In 2015, the investigation ramps up. So 2014, a couple of things happened, but nothing really came of it. 2015 comes around, ramps up. Operation Cabin was then renamed Operation Essence. With new forensic security reanalysis and community pressure, the police carried out searches and arrests, including having 20 houses searched. Among those arrested were, first of all, a man named Alistair Cooper. He was age 59. He was the first to be arrested during Operation Essence. He was a university employee who ate lunch near Claudia's workplace. He lived at Oakland Avenue, York. His son, Stevens, right?
Stephen.
Yep. Stephen worked at the Nag's Head during holidays. Police questioned Cooper multiple times and finally arrested him in March 2015. The second person was a man named Peter Stephen Ruin.
Ruin.
For age 49. He will come up many times. So he was a builder. He lived on Heworth Road, the exact same road that Claudia lived on, and actually used to live with Claudia for a period of time. So at that time, he was in a relationship with Claudia's best friend, Jen King. Ruin had ties to the properties on Heworth Place as well and was a local business owner. He briefly left for France in May 2009. So her disappearance goes down, and very quickly, soon after, he goes on a holiday. I'm a bit suspect. Third person is Shane Ruin. So he is Peter Ruin's brother, and he is a locksmith. He was also connected through marriage to another person of interest, the fourth person arrested, named David Robinson. He's age 46. So David was a UPVC installer who lived on Hamlin Avenue and was Shane Ruin's brother-in-law. So one of the above men was also of particular interest to the police because he had attempted to send his Ford Mondeo car to a scrapyard for disposal. The car was retained by police for further examination, but eventually given back, suggesting nothing came up. To this day, we do not know which of the suspects it was that owned that car. What's interesting, however, about all of the men who were arrested is that they all shared the same traits that Claudia found attractive. So they're all middle-aged men, builders, or with their own businesses. They were all married or in a long-term relationship, and they all drank at the Nag's Head pub. Further, all men lived very close to one another and close to Claudia. Susie, who knows some of those arrested extremely well, said on her social media, quote, "In the very same type of friendship that I have with Claudia, I have with Jen, Pete, George, who is the landlord of Nag's Head, and Steve. So there is not 1 ounce of me that believes they are involved." Now, she's only mentioning of those arrested that were suspicious was the Pete guy. Everyone else she didn't make comments on. However, Jen posted the following. She said, quote, "So celebrate if you must this, quote, new development. But as one of those few who knows Claudia and all these men arrested, I can say with absolute certainty, regret and complete sadness that we are not any closer to finding her than we were 6 months ago." So she stands behind all the people arrested. She doesn't believe it's going to progress the case at all. But that also begs the question, how much do you actually know someone? Like, she's standing behind all these people because she knew them, but the police believe that the person who abducted Claudia, as we'll discuss later, is most likely someone very close to her.
Well, they didn't even fully know Claudia too well because they didn't know she was sleeping with married men.
That's true.
So, like you said, you don't really know anyone.
No, especially, and if she says all the same type of friendship that I have with Claudia, like clearly, yeah, that's true. You didn't know her either. But regardless, a theory by Major Lang on Medium, who has covered this case extensively, believes the string of arrests suggests the following. I have to agree with her. She says that Paul Harris, the landlord of the Acom, is arrested for perverting the court of justice. It is clear here that he has not provided police with a full account of what he knew possibly. The landlord then provides helpful information that, as we said, progresses the investigation. This information then leads to Alistair Cooper's arrest because he was the first to be arrested. Combining what the landlord said, what Alistair said, possible security footage, this then leads to the arrest of the last 3 people. So Peter Ruin, his brother Shane Ruin, and Shane's brother-in-law David Robinson were all kind of arrested at the same time, and they're all very closely related. They're either brothers or brothers-in-law. So there's like a very strong connection between those 3. So it asked so I'm thinking, were these three men who were related to each other by blood and marriage involved in her disappearance and helped each other cover it up? I think so. Because there seems to be like a methodology, and then boom, the police kind of swarm in on these three people who are very closely connected.
And there was a bunch of three men around the property at the time.
Yeah, multiple men, yeah. So after 7 months of deliberation, the Crown Prosecution Service announced that there was insufficient evidence to charge any of the men arrested. Detectives publicly expressed frustration. Detective Superintendent Day Malin stated, quote, "I will strongly favor the theory that the person or persons responsible for Claudia's disappearance was someone or several people who were close to her." He added that those associated with Claudia had withheld key information. The detective had said he believed the investigation had been, quote, "compromised by the reluctance of some and refusal of others to cooperate with police inquiries." He said, quote, "I am sure that there are some people who know or have very strong suspicions about what happened to Claudia. For whatever reason, they have either refused to come forward or have been economic with the truth. I am left with the inescapable conclusion that this case could still be solved if only people were honest with us. The fact that they are not is agonizing for Claudia's family, and they should be ashamed of themselves." Strong words. Detective said he believes a man captured on security walking to Claudia's house the night of her disappearance was, quote, "the most important person to trace." So I believe this is what we referred to before as light person. He hasn't, quote, "he hasn't come forward. I can only speculate why he hasn't done so and whether someone is protecting him," unquote. Martin Dales, a friend and spokesman for Peter, Claudia's father, said, quote, "It is nearly the 7th anniversary of Claudia's disappearance, and it seems that we're all back to square one. It's really quite depressing, especially as someone is clearly withholding the information needed." So it's kind of stagnated. 2015, there was a big push, multiple men arrested, 4 men arrested, and then 2016 comes around and it all just goes back to square one. All the men are released, there's insufficient evidence, and everything's kind of like, back to square one. Which takes us to the next development in 2018. So as I said, the police investigation stalled. 2018, major development. Claudia usually drove to work in a dark blue Vauxhall Corsa. At the time of her disappearance, the car was in for major engine repairs, hence why she was walking to work. The right rear headset in her car was raised, suggesting a tall passenger had recently been seated. And in the car, police found a cigarette butt with male DNA from an Embassy Regal cigarette. Claudia was not a smoker, but it is understood she had no issues with friends and family smoking while in the car. But here's where it gets unsettling. Google Street View from August 2008, so the year before her disappearance, captured a pack of the same brand on the pavement right outside Claudia's front door. And then again, even weirder. Adding fuel to the fire, Jen's brother, Richard, later posted a photograph of Embassy Regal cigarettes on his Facebook page, jokingly advertising them. Considering how sensitive this case is, that's a weird joke to make, right?
It's a weird thing to do, right? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. From one of, Jen is Claudia's alleged best friend, and her brother's making these really weird jabs. It's very, very strange. A key post appeared on Facebook from the founding member of one of the Claudia Lawrence's online groups. It contained a statement following a call with a member of the North Yorkshire Police Cold Case Unit. This is what the post said. "I spoke to a member of the major investigation team this afternoon who confirmed to me that the DNA obtained from the Embassy Regal cigarette butt found in the ashtray of Claudia's car was from a male, but they have no way of telling whether that person was right-handed or left-handed or anything else. They also told me that Claudia's car had broken down multiple times in the months prior in different locations, so the cigarette may have belonged to anyone who towed or worked on a vehicle." The senior investigating officer at the North Yorkshire Police, Wayne Fox, told the Times earlier this year that, quote, "all those known to have been in contact with the car assisted the inquiry and eliminated on the basis of DNA recovery. So whose cigarette it was remains a mystery to this day." However, on that point, when you research this case, it always comes up that the cigarette was by someone who smoked with their left hand. So although this random post on Facebook seems to suggest that someone called the police and the police was like, no, all we know is that there was male DNA. We don't know if it's left or right-handed. This does make me think, though, that if it was a left-handed person smoking, remember that witness on the morning that Claudia may have disappeared, the 19th, the Thursday morning, there was a man seen smoking a cigarette in his left hand. That could be a link. So I'm not sure whether this post is legit, whether the police just said to this woman who maybe hysterically called wanting an update, saying, no, we don't know anything yet, calm your farm, and whether the left-handed thing was an actual fact that's since been brushed under the rug or what. But you research this case, or constantly talk about this cigarette being someone with who's left-handed smoked it.
Also, someone tall in her car.
Yeah.
Hence the big feet on the.
Oh yeah, true.
On the what's it called?
Scales. Bathroom
on the scales.
Yeah.
Bathroom scales, big feet, someone tall. So obviously he's a big guy.
Yeah. Was it the boyfriend?
Was it the boyfriend? Mysterious boyfriend.
Which was what the 2014 psychic said.
Right, and he was right about some weird things.
Yeah.
So I don't know what that's all about. Maybe he had some insider info, or maybe he was just guessing and he was lucky, a coincidence. Or maybe he did get some I don't know.
Yeah,
maybe
who knows?
He did get some psychic revelations.
Yeah.
Probably not, but who knows. A number of recent searches were conducted as recently as 2021, but to no avail. However, throughout the investigation, dark rumours began circulating and locals began to hear all kinds of stories. So, as Josh probably would have heard, we heard stories, didn't we, Josh, from basically like, she's buried under the university, she's buried in a ditch somewhere, she's thrown into the lake, she was fed to pigs. There are so many stories. So my boss, who I used to work with, we were chatting one time, I think it was a quiet shift, and she just told me, oh yeah, I knew, her dad's a farmer, and he works on some land, and I think he hired some gypsies to do something, some travellers, and they told him that they knew what happened to Claudia and that their mate fed her to the pigs. So then her dad told her, and then she told me, and she was like, apparently these guys are like a bit silly, and she was like, apparently they were saying it in like a jokey way, like, oh yeah, our mate knows where she is, she's buried, kind of thing. Bit of a weird thing to joke about, but I guess that's a story you'll always say. If you go to York and ask someone, it's always fed to the pigs or buried under the university. So that's the rumours that were circulating around this time. It seems as though there was a potential breakthrough in the case when teams of police, search experts, specially trained search dogs, divers and forensic archaeologists took part in a search for Claudia's remains. The search was conducted in Sand Hutton gravel pits about 8 miles out of York in August of 2021. Detective Superintendent Wayne Fox, who was the head of the investigation team, has confirmed that nothing of significance was located during the searches, and they searched in the lakes and the wooded area around there too. A small number of items were recovered during the 2-week search. Whilst these items are being assessed for their forensic potential, any relevance to Claudia's disappearance has not been currently established. In February of 2022, now this is the creepy bit. This is so creepy. This creeped me out. I don't know if you know this, Josh, but this bit's weird. In February of 2022, a floral tribute for Claudia with her photograph was found in a location with a letter saying, "She's in the water," with an arrow on it pointing. It was written in block capitals. Which water could this be referring to? They're not too sure, but they think it could be the lake what the police were searching, and maybe they missed something. So maybe whoever put this there was saying, go check this lake again because she's actually there and you must have missed her. But here's the weird thing as well. The author of this note and the floral arrangement has never been... It's still a mystery. We don't know who did that. There must be a trace of someone, surely, who paid for that. And the
Nothing.
Yeah.
And that's
spooky.
really where the investigation ends. Nothing. That's the last kind of
last development.
Mainstream development, anyway.
Now, Claudia's mum, Joan, was distraught with the way the investigators had handled the case and with the lack of progress. So she began a podcast with Tom McDermott called Answers for Claudia. She hoped that this could generate momentum and share information regarding Claudia's disappearance in hopes of solving the case. From this podcast, 4 startling developments emerged. So Claudia's mother, Joan, still harbours hope for her daughter, and she believes that she could still be alive. She has found new evidence after following a lead from a van driver called Dave, who recalled seeing Claudia in a leather jacket while driving north with a friend on the A1M, which is a motorway in the UK, on Wednesday the 18th of March 2009. Baffled by what she was doing there, he pulled over and called the police, but he was fearful that it might be a scam in which a woman forced drivers to stop only to have their vehicles robbed. When he went home, he thought more about it, and then a few days later, he saw Claudia's face on a missing advertisement on television. I think it must have been Crime Watch. He saw her on Crime Watch, saw her face, and he said his face dropped, and he realised that's the woman on the motorway. He contacted the police, but believes it was not followed up. But this was just the beginning of the revelations that came. So Claudia's mother, Joan, entered Claudia's house with a podcast crew to search for this leather jacket that Dave had seen her wearing when he saw her on the motorway. This is when they came across something incredibly eerie. John said they found a secret loft inside Claudia's home. A tiny attic hatch was found in a built-in wardrobe inside Claudia's bedroom. Within the attic was tissues and a packet of half-chewed chewing gum inside of a black leather jacket. Claudia's mum and the podcast crew hoped that this might contain crucial DNA clues. Despite this development, Joan said that she didn't want the police inside the property as she had, quote, lost all faith and trust in them. She said that she didn't want the police to do it alone as they never got it right and they didn't get it right the first time. She has vowed to never let the North Yorkshire police have access alone into Claudia's home, saying that the last time they searched her home, they left it a complete mess. Which kills me because the next bit...
I know.
So at this point, she's found a secret compartment in the house, and she doesn't go to the police
with potential DNA evidence. Like, what is she going to do with it? She has to hand it over to the police to get it analysed, right?
You could do it privately, I guess.
You
could do it privately.
Sorry,
but
that's true.
Disturbingly, however, a few days after she released this podcast, so she put it out on her podcast and revealed these details, she was shocked to discover that this secret loft had been tampered with. So someone had gone into the house and got into this loft. Joan claimed that the internal door that she meticulously locks was left wide open and that the home's front door's lock was scratched and bent. She added that a shelf unit had been moved and that the attic hatch, the secret compartment, had been tampered with and that clothes had been taken from Claudia's wardrobe. The gum and tissue had also been taken. Which kills me. That kills me. Oh my God. There's so much could go off with that. And
I know.
Yeah.
Why tell? I mean, obviously, she obviously would have deep regret about it now.
Absolutely.
But
bless
saying
her.
it, just like you do, because you know that the predator, whoever took her, must be listening.
They're listening.
They're 100%, which is so eerie. That
They'll be listening to this. Probably.
Damn you to hell.
Yeah. That's the weird thing, right?
Of course.
If you cover unsolved stuff, they're probably going to listen to it.
Yeah, because they don't want to be found out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Joan is confident that the intruders wanted to possibly obtain or investigate if any evidence that tied them to her disappearance was there, and that they potentially have just destroyed that now. Joan said, "I got one hell of a shock. I still don't know how they got in. It makes me feel a bit creeped out going there on my own to see that somebody else has been inside. I will go in daylight though, but it's made me really nervous. I can't go in the house on my own now." Furthermore, she stated, "It looks like a professional job," which is something to keep in your mind, because there's no break-ins through the window or damage to the doors. It's either somebody who has a key or knows how to break into houses. I think the disturbance was nothing to do with the loft, but more to do with the clothing and that tissue. Following this incident, a spokesperson for the North Yorkshire Police said, "We've been made aware of Miss Lawrence's concerns that some items have been moved inside the property. We have contacted her to discuss this, but as of yet, we have not been given access to the property, which would allow us to investigate this further." So even after this, she's not letting the police involved. I understand that they've messed up. I understand that the police have messed up to some degree.
Yeah.
But surely they could do something now, because you've just got a major, major lead.
Yeah. The perpetrator clearly has broken into the house, and there could be DNA of him getting the DNA.
True.
So, like, it would have been a good time to let police just search everything and make sure there's no fresh fingerprints that could be traced back to him.
I wonder if she thinks that some of the police were involved in the cover-up, so she don't want them to even get a chance to cover it up.
Yeah.
She could be sceptical because obviously she was sleeping with police officers. Maybe there's some cops in there who might have a reason to get rid of it. Maybe she knows. She might have heard. She more than anyone. She's probably heard more rumors than me and Josh have.
Sure, yeah.
And she'll probably know of some coppers who have slept with her and could have potentially done something to help cover it up.
That makes more sense than just sheer incompetence. Like, if you think the police are just incompetent at this point in time, you'd be like, well, I have my reservations, but if you genuinely suspect the police.
She could vet the police and say, look, I'm only going to let some police officers in here just so I can have accountability. I want to know who you are, blah, blah, and vet them as well.
Does she have the power to do that, though?
I mean, if she has access to let them in and out of the house, yeah, because they can't just go in she's not letting them in. So she does have power who goes in or not. So
I
she
would
could
have
probably
thought if it's a
say,
part of an investigation, they could just do it to
"You
follow a
think so, right?"
mystery.
Yeah,
Do
but
they need permission or do they have to go to a court? I guess you have to go to a court, right?
Probably,
And
yeah.
get, of course, yeah.
So, but here's one thing to remember: that one of the suspects, Shane Ruin, was a locksmith.
Yes.
So could he have been the professional who broke into the house?
Yes.
It all does kind of line up. Despite this major setback, one of the podcast producers said, "There are encouraging signs that we are going to generate some new answers for Mrs. Lawrence. The police and Tom, the podcast host, are talking to each other in a proper grown-up way. People are still coming forward to this day with information, and we've clearly rattled somebody who has been into the house."
Oh, it's so creepy.
Could you? Oh, that'd be
It's so horrible.
so eerie. My God.
So the next revelation on the Answers for Claudia podcast was the discovery of the rucksack Claudia was wearing the day she went missing. In an interview with a woman named Bev, she revealed that she found the purple and blue Caramore bag inside a tree stump near the river trees at Ingle Bay, Barwick, about 40 miles from York. The bag, which contained foil-wrapped sandwiches, was discovered by Bev just days after the chef vanished. Although she initially left the rucksack, Bev later returned to search for it after hearing police mention it in a police conference. "It wasn't until I'd seen the newspaper article that I went," she said. "That is the bag I found. I distinctly remember turning the newspaper over and seeing the bag, knowing that is the bag I found," she said. However, when Bev returned to the same spot, the bag had gone. Makes you think that the perpetrators are probably like, all right, let's just go through everywhere we've been to and tidy up to make sure there's no possible evidence of her anywhere. The final, however, and most significant revelation on the podcast was heard from a woman who was previously in an abusive relationship, and she was referred to by the alias of Lucy. So Lucy said she and her partner were having a property dispute and that she wanted more assurances in writing about the deal before signing. She said that her partner, he got her, quote unquote, by the scruff of the neck and pinned her against the wall. Lucy told the podcast that her partner said, quote, "Sign the effing documents, otherwise I will get the gypsies to come and get you. They'll feed you to the pigs. There won't be any evidence left of you because the pigs eat everything, including the bones, just like what they did with Claudia Lawrence." She added, quote, "And he stood back as if to say, I shouldn't have said that. And I just went, oh my God, I'm off. And out the door I went," unquote. Lucy also claimed her then partner, whose identity was not revealed, is a figure who appears in grainy security footage outside Claudia's house on the night she disappeared. The footage is hard to make out, but Lucy said that when she saw the footage, she recognized her partner's distinctive stooping walk. Quote, "I had a look at it and I thought, oh my God, that's him walking," she said. "That's how he walked. It's like a proper step, whereas I like shuffle a bit more. He's got a slight stoop. That's how he would stoop exactly. He's got grey hair as well," unquote. Asked if she was positive it was the same man, she said, quote, "Yes, 100% the same person," unquote. So was that the light person? And like, you know, when like something, you have the grainy footage, but then you see it and you just know it's the person. Like there's something you can't quite describe. And I should say it's like just the way they walk. It's like everyone has a slight mannerism, and she recognized it gut instinct instantly.
There's something to that, I reckon.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah. I think there is a thing like that, though. I think there is a thing where people can actually tell who someone is from a far enough distance away from the back of their head, by the way they walk. I'm sure that's like a phenomenon. So
the police, throughout this investigation, and still to this day, maintain that it was likely someone close to Claudia who did this, as discussed. So the detective at North Yorkshire Police in 2015, he said, quote, "I'm still convinced people close to Claudia have told us lies." Many more of her friends were quizzed by police, including Jen, who spoke to Tom on the Answers for Claudia podcast. Jen said she is now obsessed with her own security after being a victim of a stalker. She described being questioned by police as, quote, "traumatic," but understands why they were convinced answers about her disappearance could come from someone who knew Claudia. She said, quote, "I understand why the police did what they were doing because statistically it should have been one of us. Statistically, it is probably one of us. All I can say is hand on heart, it's not me. The situation has gone so far that even undercover police officers pretended to be her friend, resulting in the breakdown of trust with those around her." Didn't you say last week that like cops or like spies often get in relationships with have families and then just like bolt when like the mission's done?
Yep.
This isn't as extreme, but like undercover friends is
in
always
the same
just
realm,
wild.
right? Yeah, it's creepy, right?
Yeah, so creepy. So this situation has obviously resulted in a breakdown of trust for her. She's apparently deeply traumatized by this entire thing. But here's where things get sinister. Jen also said, I did have a stalker at one point, which is horrendous. I was living on my own at the time. I knew that this person kept traveling to the area, kept taking pictures outside my house, would stand on my doorway, and would turn up at my local pub. The social media sites are doing nothing to protect us, which makes me think either she's trying to throw things off her scent because her boyfriend is Peter Ruin, one of the main suspects in this case, or more likely she was actually a victim of a stalker, which makes me think, did the stalker go for Claudia and now switched to her? Could she have possibly at one stage been the potential second victim? It's creepy. So overall, one would think this is a classic missing persons case. The truth, however, is very far from it. So a journalist who was working on the case said that he had been threatened and warned off twice by individuals. According to online comments, this reporter was Gerard Tubb from Sky News, and that the person who warned him was Paddy McGinty, but that's unconfirmed. That's just online speculation. Paddy, as discussed, was Claudia's ex that she had a 10-year affair with. And to this day, there is an eerie wall of silence. As I mentioned, when speaking to you about this, it's all like very hush, 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 hush.
Yeah, I wouldn't talk about it out loud in New York. If I was in a pub, I'm not talking about it.
So odd.
Yes, yeah.
So even when exploring Reddit comments, there is a lot of suggestions, but people are hesitant to come right out and say it. So for example, one Redditor posted, quote, "It's widely known / accepted in the local area of York that the police know who killed her, but with no body or lack of solid evidence, they can't bring charges. Yet the pub, that's a key part of it all, apparently. More than one person knows what happened." It's, unquote. It's so extensive, in fact, that another Redditor posted, quote, "Whenever I look at posts about Claudia, I see posts just like this. Vague inferences, but no one's saying anything concrete. Every other case here, people will drop names and theories, but no one seems to be willing to do that for poor Claudia. I just don't understand the wall of silence." And another person responded to this person and said, quote, "It's difficult in the UK to be open about these things online. The police can and have, quote unquote, spoken to people about such online communications. From my perspective, I know the police are aware of who was involved, and naming them online may damage any chances there are of charging / convicting. Any suspect needs to be able to have a fair trial if it ever gets to that stage. I don't want to be that negative impact. Others might feel differently, and I know at least one person has published the name online." But to be fair to that point, though, I mean, every other case, how's Claudia any different to any other case throughout UK? In the UK, people have no problem saying, "I think it was this person." Yeah, no one gets a knock on the door. So it feels like this person's especially paranoid.
Claudia's definitely more high profile than other ones, I think. It's just such a well-known case that I think... It's because I feel like if you're dropping names as well, there's more that could go wrong with it, because it's so well known that if you name someone, that can actually impact the trial as opposed to a lesser known kind of disappearance. I know that can be a thing.
Maybe.
But
however, despite this, if you keep going through the post, you do see one name reoccurring, referenced simply as PR, which, as I kept looking through, is actually in reference to Peter Ruin, who's one of the main suspects arrested in 2015, which brings us to speculate as to the possible theories as to who abducted Claudia and why.
Now, by all accounts, Peter matched her type perfectly. Could it be possible that Claudia went behind her friend Jennifer's back and had an affair with Peter, and then he used his property and connections to silence her when she wanted to come clean? Did he sneak into her home, grab her, use the alleyway behind it, and take her to the Nag's Head pub, then into an upper bedroom using the fire escape, all so he could interrogate her and convince her not to tell Jen? Is it possible that a conflict arose and things went too far, so they then took her out of the pub into his workplace and drove her to a construction site? Many people in New York believe that Claudia is buried underneath the university campus. If so, she would have been buried underneath some foundations, and right now it's impossible to get her body back as she's just been built on top of. As mentioned, Peter's brother Shane Ruin was a locksmith, and he could have easily trespassed Claudia's home after the podcast released the potential evidence linking them to the murder. Both Shane and Shane's brother-in-law have ties with construction, and disposing the body may have been quite easy.
I just realized you said that Peter may have, or like the boys. I think it was a group activity, hence why multiple people were watching, right? I just realized instead of Peter or the boys going in behind her house at the alley and like abducting her and dragging her to Nag's Head, this is just a theory, But she has allegedly a DVD out there where she's sleeping with 10 men at the one time, right? What if they're like, you want a good time, meet us up in the bedroom, upstairs in the nag's head.
Good point.
You just like entice her out of it. That's probably why she was just wearing her own slippers.
Oh my God, good point.
She just walked over there, just wanted a quick route. I mean, sorry. She just wanted a good time.
Yeah.
Went up to the fire escape because she knows that there's no CCTV. And then that's when they kind of cornered her. Something went wrong. And then they're like, all right, we got to dispose of her. They're all in married, committed relationships. I mean, Peter, as I said, his girlfriend was Jen. And Jen and Peter used to live with Claudia. So it's like very entangled. They don't want this to get out.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then Peter's workplace, his work shared basically, I believe, the parking lot. So he could have easily taken, or the boys could have easily just transferred her body to their workplace and just made an escape from there. But I just thought, I don't think she was abducted. There was no there doesn't seem to have been like any spilt blood. The house was very tidy and neat. Mm-hmm. So it makes me think that
didn't happen there.
It didn't happen there. She was maybe lured out by a good time at the Nag's Head. And then afterwards, the boys came back that next morning to make sure the guy the light person had a backpack, a concealed backpack underneath his jacket, what it looked like. He probably went in there to make sure any possible evidence, like the phone, like her phone or something, wasn't left behind to incriminate them.
Mm-hmm. Good point.
Yeah.
Really good point, actually.
So the next allegation is that she may have been blackmailing the men she had sexual relationships with. There is an online discussion that state witnesses have said Claudia told them she had done that she had blackmailed these men. Some go further to allege that she had unexplained bank deposits, jewelry, clothes, trips that would indicate living beyond her employment means. An anonymous post on a local forum offered this controversial take. Quote, there's sympathy for the mother who has always shown dignity, but the father knew what his daughter was doing and did nothing to stop her. Quote, someone encouraged her to seek financial compensation from her suitors. Who was that? So if that was true, this would be an extremely compelling motive for someone to abduct and kill her if she's outright blackmailing them. It's one thing to just be sleeping with someone and you don't want, it just, the relationship ends and she doesn't want anything to do with you. She had her fun. Yeah. But if for whatever reason part of her sexual kick was actually, no, I want to exploit these men who are very vulnerable because their entire lives is about to be rattled, with their wives finding out, then that's very, very compelling motive.
Especially these men have got businesses where their wife can take half. True. So it'd be financially... It'd be better for them to just pay her off rather than lose half.
Yeah.
So that's a dangerous game to play.
Yeah.
A really dangerous game to play.
If that was true. It's all speculation. Yeah.
So we should pinch of salt with this.
Always.
Handful of salt with this one because it is speculation.
Yeah.
But the next theory is a man called Christopher Halliwell. So Christopher is currently serving a life sentence for killing 2 women in Wiltshire in 2003 and 2011. Eerily, however, Christopher also had links to Yorkshire and may have stalked women there too. In fact, there was a claim that Christopher wanted to go as far as to relocate to Yorkshire. The mother of one of Christopher's victims believes that there could be a link to Claudia Lawrence. One of the more plausible aspects to this theory is that Christopher was a taxi driver. As discussed earlier in this case, police called taxi drivers to come forward earlier in the investigation. Perhaps Christopher had stalked Claudia and driven by as she was walking to work and offered her a lift. As he was a taxi driver, she might have been more trusting and actually gotten inside. North Yorkshire police have said that they have investigated Christopher's movements around the time Claudia disappeared, but they say that this is highly unlikely as Christopher was operating as a taxi driver but in Swindon at the time. Now, despite this even happening, I think it's possible that he could have just driven from Swindon to Yorkshire if he liked Yorkshire so much.
Yeah.
And just...
Yeah.
It's not beyond the rim of possibility. He could have just been in York for the day.
Yeah. Or another taxi driver. Remember the psychic? He said that she was strangled in the car by a man, 52-year-old, and the fact that the police were looking for a taxi driver. Even if it wasn't this guy, maybe it was still a taxi driver, and the theory could still hold.
Do you think the psychic was getting some info from people and just wanted to say he was a psychic, but he knew some little details?
Maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, I believe in psychics. I don't know if he was one. I think he probably, if he was a fraud, then he'd have to be getting it for someone.
I think he was getting some
info. You can't just say stuff like, she did fireworks as a kid, and there was a mattress and everything removed from the neck. That's intel.
Because then I thought, though, to be fair, if you knew about the fireworks stuff, that's such a
personal.
But he could have found out someone he went to school with and just asked them.
True. Yeah. Yeah.
I knew Claudia, she let off fireworks at school. And he goes, okay, I've got that. And then when you say it, it sounds more
Yeah, true.
magical than it actually is. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And then, so the fourth one, so what if, remember that girl Lucy and her domestic violence ex who had said that, yeah, I know about, Claudia being fed to the pigs, and that she remembered he looked exactly like the person in the CCTV footage looked exactly like him because he walked with a stoop. I think that's pretty compelling. The only thing is that it's unclear. He might just know that a certain people got rid of her body via the pigs. Like, I don't know that necessarily he'd done it. Often people like that might be just like cowardice. He's just trying to bully her and intimidate her and scare her and just say, hey, I've heard this theory, which you said is pervasive in York.
Yeah.
About the pigs. He might have just said that to scare her. Because, I mean, how many people have access to quote unquote gypsies that feed women to pigs? Is that like a common thing? I feel like the construction theory makes more sense. They actually have Paul, what was his name?
Paul Ruin.
Yeah, Peter.
Peter Ruin.
Sorry, Peter. Peter actually had a construction, what's the word?
Company. Is it?
Not company. He had a contract. Yeah.
Sorry, yeah.
Peter, sorry. So Peter actually had a contract out on York University. And as you said, they were building the foundations at the time. And a common discussion is that she was buried under the uni. That seems plausible because a suspect has direct access to a possible way to dispose of her body. Whereas the ex-partner of Lucy, I think he's just talking shit to scare her. But it is weird about the CCTV footage that she's like, that's him. That is super eerie.
It is eerie, yeah.
Yeah. Maybe he just coincidentally was there around that time.
Which is possible.
Yeah.
That's obviously possible, yeah.
Is York a small town?
Yeah. It's a city.
But it's small?
It's a big town.
Yeah.
That's what it feels like. It's not really a city.
Yeah, fair.
Yeah.
And that's really it. Or not killed at all. That's probably the last one.
So the last theory is she wasn't killed at all and she just fled and she's living a life somewhere else. So this is actually something that the mother has got her fingers crossed and she's praying that this is the case. And this is because the man saw her in a leather jacket walking up the motorway, and Dave is adamant that he saw Claudia Lawrence the day she disappeared and she was walking up a highway. Now, if you wanted to vanish, the one place I wouldn't walk is up a highway because people are going to log that in their brain forever. Like Dave did. So it's a silly thing to do. I do think he almost probably did. I think he saw a woman.
Yeah.
I think his brain just made the connection.
Sure.
I don't think that was her.
No.
Sadly, I think she's being killed. I don't think she's living a life, unfortunately.
Unless, I mean, if it's true that she was sleeping, I mean, the police said 40, but it's talked about online that it was significantly more than 40.
So people in York is up in multiple hundreds.
Yeah. So if she's not like an older lady, right? So if she's sleeping with possibly hundreds, certainly more than, at least 100, whatever, you're sleeping in a DVD, you've found allegedly a DVD with you sleeping with 10 men, the whole shebang. Surely that might suggest, like, does that not, don't we have some research that kind of extensive sort of behavior can lead to mental health problems? Or, and especially if she's targeting married men with the aims of breaking them up and she gets a kick out of it, that to me a possible outcome might be maybe she had she can't do this anymore. Maybe she was having a really bad mental health time and she's like, I need a new life, I need a new start. She leaves absolutely everything and everyone.
That's possible. It could have been quite damaging to her if she was getting close to all these men all the time and then things were going, because I think she did break up with them, but that's got to take a toll, right? If you're getting close to these men and then things go sour, or because I can imagine these men were choosing their wives ultimately over her all the time as well.
100%.
So,
and that's brutal.
It's got to be brutal on your mental health, yeah.
All the time. And then she compartmentalized her life to an extreme. So no one would ever truly know the real her and her issues. And I know, for example, someone with BPD who lives that to the extreme, where it's like, I am one person to one set of people and then I'm a completely different personality to someone else. And that has such a deep impact on your personality.
It's exhausting, I think.
Yeah.
It can be.
No one ever truly knows and loves you for you. That would be a haunting experience. Not to say that she had BPD or anything like that, but I do think this sort of behavior, and I'm all for women doing whatever they want, just as men, whatever. This isn't a comment on that. But if you're sleeping with hundreds of men and specifically older men who you want to just kind of destroy their lives in a sense, or you just get a kick out of being like the chosen young girl, I don't know what that complex is, that's got to be that's got to have an impact on your mental health.
Got to do something a little bit.
Something.
It's got to do something, yeah.
Yeah.
One thing I remember seeing one time was like maybe she blackmailed a man and got a big payout and just thought, I'm just going to leave and just go somewhere. I don't need my passport. I can go to a different part of England. But saying that, her face is so well known now in the UK, I think. It'd be very hard for her not to get cited on a regular basis.
The image of her was blonde and 26. If she just dyed her hair black, would anyone recognize?
Wore some glasses.
Yep.
Put on some, changed
in a different country. I'm Australian. I've never heard of this case.
Yeah, I think it's like Madeleine McCann, but I think it's that level of infamy in the UK, but not globally. I think Madeleine McCann's pretty global.
Yeah,
but certainly like Claudia Lawrence, you'd struggle to find many people in the UK who haven't at least heard of that name.
Well, at least at this point, it's been 15 years. She could have dyed her hair black, glasses, and she thought, I can't do this anymore. I just had a break,
15,
a mental
16
break.
years, my God.
Maybe that is true, and maybe she'll just come up.
Oh, God. I mean, that'd be nice.
Yeah.
I guess, but I do think.
I think she was killed.
Unfortunately, I think she was killed.
Yeah.
I think she's blackmailed the wrong person.
Yes.
And I think that person had too much to lose. Yeah. And I think he's just got a group of people.
Yeah.
Who
I think she blackmailed the group. I think she.
I think she could have been compromised, and she had multiple people compromised, and she thought, okay, this is a good way to.
Yeah.
We need to silence her. We can all work together. We all have different skills to kind of like do this kind of thing, and then. Yeah, you can bury her here.
And the investigators said that this case won't be cracked until basically because they basically said that it's such a wall of silence until one of them breaks, until a relationship between the perpetrators falls apart, this case won't progress. So I think those three gentlemen, Peter, Shane, and the Robinson, I think they're all in on it. They all know something. They all helped each other to conceal this, and they're airtight. They're not ratting each other out.
Yeah, allegedly.
I mean, that's my opinion. I think that I know this is like some weird York wall of silence thing happening here, but that's my opinion. I think it was those three men. I could be wrong, obviously.
Yeah,
don't come for me.
It's an interesting case with loads of different possibilities. Could be none of those people mentioned. It could be someone else. She had a secret of life. It could have been someone completely different. We don't even know.
Yeah.
The secret boyfriend who never materialized.
Yeah, that's true. The ex-boyfriend, of course.
There's so many people who it could be. That's why it makes it so infamous, I think, as well. There's just so many possibilities.
Yeah.
So many people who have reasons to kill. You think hundreds of sexual partners. Yeah. Hundreds of potential girlfriends too.
Yes.
So you're dealing with hundreds of potential people. You got women too. So you got hundreds of men and hundreds of women who have a reason to kill her.
Remember the car parked out front of her house for 30 minutes and there was a man, a woman in the back, and possibly another man in the back seat. There were women involved in that. Were they involved? So you're so right. It could be a women involved in this.
One thing as well is Josh's brother has some information. So he actually spoke to someone who has some like information. We should give him a call. We'll put it at the end of the When this episode finishes, we'll play the call. But that about wraps up now.
Yes,
that's the case of Claudia Lawrence in York. So thank you very much for watching, and as always, let us know your opinions and suggest any cases that you might want us to cover.
Yes.
But with that, that's everything. So
please like and subscribe.
Watching. Yeah, like and subscribe. Thank you, and take care.
Thank you. Bye.
At least 4 people, possibly 5, had been Sorry.
Daddy D.